855-325-1820. That's 855-325-1820.
Accelerated Graphics and Signs, 101 East Renfro, Sweet C in Burleson, Texas, can handle all of your graphic needs. Need a banner or promotional products for your business? They got you covered. T-shirts and caps for your group. All you need to figure out is if you want them screen printed or embroidered. How about some slick graphics on that hot ride to make you stand out from the crowd? Accelerated Graphics and Signs can handle anything you throw at them. Located at 101 East Renfro Street, Sweet C in Burleson, Texas, go in and see them. Call them at 817-991-0523 or reach them on the web at www.acceleratedgraphics.net. They are loud and proud and want to serve you. Accelerated Graphics.
Out of dead carpet giving you the blues? Tired of your old dingy and broken tile? Let my friends at the Floor Store in Cleveland, Texas give your home the makeover it deserves. This is Old Taco Joe coming to you for the Floor Store. Whether it's carpet, tile, wood flooring, or real wood laminate, the Floor Store can cover all of your flooring needs. Located at 405 West Henderson Street in Cleveland, Texas, owner Brent Harris can help. Shower tile, tub surrounds, even backsplashes. Give them a call today at 817-641-9444. The Floor Store, they've got you covered.
Why have thousands of aspiring authors teamed up with Christian Faith Publishing to publish their book? Because Christian Faith Publishing is an author-friendly publisher who understands that your labor is more than just a book. We provide authors freedom and flexibility throughout the publishing process, professional book editing, award-winning design, and some of the highest royalty structures in the publishing industry. And as always, you will retain 100% of the rights to your book.
I was looking to find a company that I could trust, one that assisted in the editing process completely.
The most important qualities that I was looking for was a publisher who was honest and upfront, no hidden costs or fees, and owning the rights to my own work.
Christian Faith Publishing will publish, market, and sell your books in all major bookstores, online booksellers, as well as specialty Christian bookstores. Call for your free author submission kit.
800-978-4812. 800-978-4812. 800-978-4812. That's 800-978-4812.
When you're hungry for tender brisket or some delicious homemade cobbler, then look no further than Leach Brothers Barbecue, located at 1106 East Henderson, Cleveland, Texas. Leach Brothers has been family-owned and operated since 1950. Take it from me, Taco Joe Orwinski. Todd and his family have been filling my belly breakfast, lunch, and dinner for a long time. Heck, I even have my own booth, open Monday through Saturday, 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. Come see them for dine-in, carry out, and all your catering needs.
Serving Johnson County, Texas, Joco Community Radio.
Hello out there in Joco land. This is Real Estate Reality. This is Jason Chandler with Infinity Mortgage. My better looking host, Diana Roberts, she is out doing some Miss Teen Texas stuff. Wish her all the best. Hope that's going good. I have a special guest here, Marcus Becerra with Goosehead Insurance here in Burleson. How you doing, Marcus?
Man, we're having a good day today.
Yeah,
it's hot.
Woo, it's way hot.
It's like I don't know, two or 3 weeks of straight 100 degrees or something. I don't know. It's crazy hot.
It is. It's vicious, and it's not going to get any better for a while.
Yeah, no, we're a long way from winter.
Well, hopefully what we can do today is, everybody I think's probably got insurance and thinks, well, they know the basics, but we're going to give them a little more, let you give them a little bit more information, stuff they should probably be looking at when they're looking at their current policy, when they're looking at a new policy, houses, cars, whatever. We'll talk about it all.
Yeah.
But why don't you tell us a little bit about Goosehead?
Well, the first thing I want to kind of make a shout out to is my wife and my new son, Mason. First Father's Day for me on Sunday. So that was pretty exciting.
Absolutely.
But
beautiful kid.
Yeah.
Great woman.
Yeah. Unbelievable woman. So I want to give a shout out to her. She's awesome. But I've been in the insurance business. I was out of college and started in 2009, and worked for a captive agency for about 7.5 years. And it was good. Learned a lot, made a lot of contacts, learned a lot about the industry. Was fortunate to work with some guys that were some really big mentors for me in the industry. And we decided to make a jump about 5 years ago, me and my business partner. And we bought a couple of Goosehead franchises, and we're now independent agents. We have an office here in Burleson, and then we have one in Frisco as well. So we're a full line brokerage agency. We've probably got about 40 plus A-rated carriers to shop through. And it's been a huge blessing for us. It was a tough start because we started from absolute scratch. But it's been good, and we met a lot of really good people along the line, a lot of good referral partners, loan officers, title folks, realtors, things like that. And it's been awesome. So.
Nice. And I can attest that he actually shows up to his office. It's not too far from mine. We could probably hit golf balls to each other. Yeah. At least Marcus could hit his golf ball. There's no telling where mine will go.
It'd probably take me about 30 to get one over there,
but he's a good guy. He's local, and he likes to work. So when, me as the lender, when people are under contract and we're getting our list of items out to, hey, we need this, and this. It's always, hey, what about insurance? Have you gotten an homeowner's insurance quote? That's always in our list. And if they say, well, no, I hadn't really thought about it or something, then we'll say, well, we'll be happy to get you a local quote. Yeah. And that's where, you've definitely, stepped up for my clients in the past, done a great job, but kind of tell these buyers, especially first-time home buyers that never had to worry about homeowners insurance, just, well, what are you looking for?
Yeah. The thing is, the thing about insurance is if you've got a loan through the bank or an auto loan or a home loan or anything like that, you've got to have it. I mean, if you have a driver's license in the state of Texas, you've got to drive around with insurance. It's what you have to have. But as far as a first-time home buyer, the thing that I think we kind of differentiate everybody else from is just, we walk them through the process. I sold insurance for a long time, never knowing what the process entailed. Right. But I bought my first house about 6 or 7 years ago, and then we did a refinance, and we've gone through a couple of different steps. So the people that are first-time home buyers, sometimes it can be a little overwhelming for them. But we try to walk them through A all the way to Z, but the biggest things we look at is obviously, we need their personal information. And, whenever we look at property, I guess the good thing about having some experience is we kind of know what a good situation is going to look like and what we need to look at as far as roofs, pools, different things like that. But the biggest thing, we just need their personal information, the house information. Most of the time the lender or the realtor can give us information on the home if the client doesn't know roof age, things like that. But where 2022 is a lot different than 2008 and 2009, back then we actually had to go out to the house, take measurements of the house to get the square footage and things like that. Whereas now, there's 40 pictures at the click of a button, Zillow, realtor.com, those kind of things. So you can really get a good evaluation of the home just clicking on the listing, So other than that, only information we need is just the client's personal information.
Well, let me ask you about that, because like you said, in the past, you had to go out there, actually inspect the home.
Yeah.
So do you feel like that information you get from Zillow and them, is that most of the times it's not going to be any changes in policy?
Well, most of the time, if in this day and age, if you're going to be purchasing a house, they're going to have to go through inspection and all that kind of fun stuff. Right. So I'm going to say 90% of the houses this day and age, they're all updated, because if they're not updated, they don't have new stuff in them. Most of the time they don't get top dollar for them. So they're going to try to put a new roof on and new paint and new flooring, HVAC, anything like that. So most of the time the houses are all in pretty good shape. But the good thing about what we used to have to do is if we had a brand new house or we had a 100-year-old house, I physically had to go out there, take pictures of the breaker boxes, the roof, all exterior photos, kitchens, restrooms, water heaters, all that stuff. So
wow.
yeah, so it's helped me and our agency kind of figure out like, hey, whenever we look at these pictures of homes these days and age, hey, everything looks really good, or hey, there's some trees hanging on the roof. I think that's going to be a little bit of an issue when they go to, get an inspection. So it's you see log homes, you see mobile homes, you see 2-story houses, you see all kinds of different stuff. And, but the cool thing about what we do is we never see the same thing twice. Everything's always different, and that's it's good. It keeps you on your toes. But well, we're blessed with some people that are really good at what they do. So if we don't have the answer to it, it's not very hard to get it.
To get that.
Yeah.
Yeah. You talk about it. You're involved, especially when you're involved in real estate.
Yeah.
Because I learned something 25 years plus in this business, and you get to thinking you know it all, and then you get slapped down by something you've never seen.
Yeah.
I'm sure that same thing's going to happen, in when you're going to insure, and you're like, well, I wouldn't have thought this would be a problem, or man, I've never seen this
For sure.
before. And
and that's the thing is, like, whenever I first started, we had one contract and we knew that thing upside down in whichever way you turned it. But now we've got 40 plus carriers that all have different appetites. Some don't take metal roofs, some do, so it's a puzzle piece every time you talk to somebody. But the more you do it, the more comfortable you feel with it, and the better off you are to put the customer in the best possible spot they can be. And that's the really good thing about being a broker. There's not very many things that come across my desk that we can't take care of. So pretty fortunate on that end of it.
So what you're saying is, if one do you look to a main carrier? Or normally, like your own, is it Goosehead you look to?
Yeah,
and then you look at other options.
So Goosehead is a brokerage.
Okay.
We have 40 different carriers underneath the brokerage. So we have Travelers, Progressive, Safeco, a lot of companies like that. So I'm not married to one certain carrier.
Mm-hmm.
Don't get me wrong, I have my favorites. But it's always at the best interest of the customer, what coverage is going to be the best for them and what price matches with that, so kind of goes back to the first time home buyer. If you bought 5 houses or 10, my job is to make sure that the house is covered properly. The customer has what they want as far as coverages goes. And then to make sure that the premium's where it needs to be at to get the house closed, and I think that's the advantage of what we're at now is, sometimes we come down the pipeline. We're like, hey, we need this premium under 2,500. Your carrier A is at 32. And that we can see if we can get it there and get them in the home. So,
got you. When you're sitting there talking, especially to a first time home buyer,
mm-hmm.
and you're going over. Like I said, I think almost everybody knows if they get homeowners insurance, hey, if my house burns down, I'm okay.
Yeah.
If tornado hits me,
yeah.
if I live, I'm on, hopefully I live. The house, it's going to get rebuilt.
Yes, sir.
But what are the things, the coverages that maybe someone even in North Texas needs that people might not think about?
I think number one here in the Metroplex specifically is with the weather is wind and hail, is number one. And that's going to be covered on pretty much every policy. And I think that's the number one loss in the state of Texas is weather related hail, straight line winds, tornadoes, things like that. Second is going to be water coverages. So typically your wind, your hail, fire, theft, explosion, things like that are going to be covered on your regular home policy. The other stuff has to be endorsed, and that's the thing we really stress to our customers is insurance is contractual, right? So I think that's where a lot of insurance companies get a bad rap. You can Google any company in the state of Texas or in the United States and just Google bad review with the carrier, whatever, and you're going to find as many as you want. But I think where a lot of times customers get in a situation is, hey, I don't want uninsured motorist, or hey, I don't want water backup, and they have that policy for 3 or 4 years and they forget they don't have that. And then they get hit by an uninsured motorist, or they have a water backup or a slab leak or something, So it's always good to talk about it on the front end and to really, reevaluate almost on an annual basis just to make sure that, you have what you think you have and, the policy's endorsed. Because whenever you do have a claim, the adjuster is going to come out there and he's going to read the letter of the law. If you say, oh, I thought I had, foundation coverage, but it's not on the contract, technically he can't pay for that, as far as the damage goes, so those are some things, especially the water coverages, and what a lot of people don't think about is, pools make a big difference, trampolines make a big difference. And something that was really different for us moving over here was, a lot of companies don't really like dogs, certain breeds of dogs. But I think your liability claim on dog bites is steadily growing. And some of those pit bulls, Rottweilers, sometimes German Shepherds are on the list. Some carriers don't even like those, so it's a puzzle piece, right?
Yorkies and poodles still.
Yeah, no, those are all good for the most part. There's some of those are pretty darn vicious too.
Yeah, they act like it.
But it's a part of the process on the front end where we do what they call a discovery call, and we go through all those questions with the customer. So we know everything up front, and we know where to, if they do have a German Shepherd or do have a pit bull, we know where to go with it and go from there. So.
And then basically don't put the trampoline up until after the insurance has looked at everything, right?
Oh, no, I don't know about that. Mostly the trampolines, most carriers are okay with trampolines. Yeah. They just want to require a net, and they require a fence. That's what I've run into a couple of times here lately, specifically with pools. Brand new subdivision, they put a pool in, but they don't have a fence. That's kind of a no-no. And it all gets tied back to the liability portion of the policy. They just want to make sure that there's not a bunch of people, coming in from the neighborhood, getting in the pool without,
Oh, you mean no fence, like around the yard?
Yeah, around the yard.
Oh, where people could just come jump in a pool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's another thing. A lot of people, not a misconception, but liability claims are starting to climb. It could be dog bites. It could be, suing somebody for being negligent or things like that, so that's something people really aren't, they just don't hardly think about it. I've had a couple this year where they've had some barbecue fires started in their backyard and went to the neighbor's house, burned their fence down in the yard. And, I had 3 of them in 2 months, and I'm like, gosh, people, you control the fire a little bit.
Must be my family cooking. Those guys.
Throwing a little too much gas on them. But yeah, it's you always run across something different for sure.
Yeah, and that's why do you have insurance for that stuff that you don't see coming, that you don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
But
and I think the crazy thing about where we live is there's a lot of people moving in. So the rates are starting to get affected obviously with the inflation and the price of materials and stuff like that. And insurance companies aren't in the business of losing money. So I think, with the amount of population that's moving in and, houses are so close together, if there's a pretty big hailstorm, it's going to be a significant loss, so.
And we all share in that, don't we?
Yeah, we all share in it. Yes, for sure.
Because you'll hear people, well, my insurance went up and I've never had a claim, but it's, you kind of share.
Yeah,
exactly. With whoever your company is.
And a lot of people don't understand that, but I use this example. Auto insurance is typically, you have a lot to do with that. Your credit, your driving record, your accident history, your ticket history, it does go on where you live as far as a zip code and county code and things like that. What you drive, how often you drive to and from work, all kinds of things there. But home insurance is more of a shared risk, I think, just because, you have your credit and your claims history and things like that. But if an area gets battered by 4 or 5 hailstorms and they pay out hundreds of millions of dollars, you're going to see your rates go up, and I don't think anybody's ever seen it before. My age group, I'm 36. But we had the freeze. When was it? In 2021,
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately that was I have a lot of friends that are adjusters, and that was probably the biggest catastrophe. I mean, it was bigger than Hurricane Harvey is what I heard as far as the total claim amount paid out, but it was water claims, frozen pipe claims from Amarillo all the way to McAllen. So we're seeing a lot. That was a big, it wasn't in their plans as far as, losses and storm history and things like that. So,
well, yeah, frozen pipes. I had friends in El Paso.
yeah,
Friends in Houston.
Yeah.
Frozen pipes. That's unheard of.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and then the issue was this is another thing I talk to folks about when they're buying a house is, know where your water lines are. I had so many customers call me and say, hey, it took us a full day to shut our water off because we didn't know where the lines were. And then we didn't know the water lines were going through the roof, so the power went out, the frozen pipes broke, and they had water coming from the roof, so it's always good to know where all that is. And what a lot of people don't realize, so like if you got displaced, your loss of use part of the policy paid to put you in a rental property or a hotel motel till you got, till the house got fixed. And sometimes that was 2 or 3 or 4 months, so that racked up a lot of losses there as far as claims money goes. I think that's my opinion, but yeah, no, it's crazy.
Well, you talked about that, if something happened to your house and you couldn't be there,
Mhm.
you've got the people working on it and it just, you can't be there.
Yeah.
Your house is open. Sometimes a wall's gone.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah, if it's uninhabitable, the loss of use policy part of your contract will put you in a rental property or an extended stay or back with your parents, anything above your normal living expenses. And we had a couple of carriers in Dallas that when that freeze happened, they just leased the whole extended stay hotel, and that's where they stuck their customers, until everything was built back to normal.
Wow.
So that was pretty neat, but fortunate enough, our pipes didn't bust and we didn't lose electricity. I think that was the biggest issue, is when people's heat and air went out.
Mm-hmm.
The pipes, there was nothing to heat the pipes and they just froze, and then it was full blast from there.
It was a survival mode.
Yeah.
Survival mode for a lot of people.
Yeah, no, I'm 36. I've never been that cold in my life. And you got all these people from Montana and North Dakota, and they're laughing at us, like those people, they don't know what to do down there when it gets that cold.
Well, yeah, we're used to building fires, but not on our back porch, necessarily. So yeah, that was definitely a shocker there. So when you're going through, like you talked about that loss of use,
Mhm.
so if you're going through a policy,
Mhm.
with it's someone who may have had a policy before, I guarantee you most people have had insurance policies, and if they haven't had something happen to their home, they haven't really looked and see what the coverage, what is there. I mean, you've got burglary,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
You've got someone getting hurt.
Yeah.
What's that, liability?
Yeah, liability. Yeah, or medical payments. Liability is if you're negligent, like if your dog were to bite somebody, things like that. But the main thing is your dwelling coverage. That covers your house. And then you got other structures. That's a big one these days, especially if you live out in the country. And you have a $50,000-$60,000 shop. There's there you need most contracts only cover about 10% other structures. So if you insure a house for $300,000, it comes with $30,000 of other structures. So if you've got $70,000 of other structures sitting out there, that needs to be adjusted to, in case there was a tornado and stuff that would wipe that out. Personal property, that's another thing we talk to our customers about. Different percentages, usually 50% is the minimum. So on a $300,000 house, 150 is the minimum we can go. We can always go up to 100%. And then, jewelry, watches, and furs, that's another thing people really don't realize. Specifically like the ring that I've got on, A&M won today, gig 'em. But when I graduated from A&M in 2008, my Aggie ring cost $1,000. Well, 3 or 4 months ago, we had some work done on some jewelry and we got it reappraised, and it was over $3,000.
Has it gone up?
It's gone up a lot, So what I advise folks to do is, if you've got any pricey pieces, always need to get them scheduled. But you need updated appraisals, So if you bought your wife's engagement ring 8 or 10 years ago and added onto it, or, I'm sure the price really never goes down on that sort of stuff. So it's always good to get that stuff updated, because typically your basic policy only has $1,500, $2,000 max for jewelry. So if you've got any pricey pieces, you always want to get that kind of stuff scheduled for sure.
Well, that's good to hear about the A&M ring, because my daughter goes down there and I just sent her some money for a ring. So it's nice to know that the value goes up, not down.
Yeah, especially when they win,
Yeah, especially when they win. At least a good part of Texas is happy about that.
For sure.
So yeah, giggle. And of course, I'm going to bring up the Second Amendment rights. Let's talk about those guns. I mean, we're in Texas. We got our pride. Whether it's a shotgun, a lot of times a deer rifle, pistol, whatever.
That's another good talking point as far as coverage goes too. If one of the questions I ask folks is like, hey, are you a big hunter? Do you have a lot of weapons, anything like that? Because most of the time, I'm going to say 50 to 60% of carriers, maybe even a little bit higher, they only have $1,500 to $2,000 with firearms. Now some carriers will actually go up to the full policy amount on the personal property. So if they're like, man, I got $30,000 worth of weapons over here, technically don't want to like list them all. Some people are pretty, private about that, but we can, go with the carrier that does go up on their limits with their weapons,
so without having specifics, they'll just say, what's that called?
Just your schedule, your firearms goes with your personal property
coverage.
You can also schedule them too, but I'll need to know serial numbers and all that kind of fun stuff too.
And then each one of them for their value. If it was stolen, would look up what's the value of this gun.
Now, somebody's got a really, really intricate, collection of weapons. I think the NRA has something that they have like a blanket kind of policy, and I've referred a couple of people over there. I don't know what the premium is or anything like that, but I think they don't really know. They don't really want to know all the serial numbers, because some people are like, I don't want everybody knowing out there in the interwebs what I got going on.
Right.
So, it's if they've got that big weaponry, then I do refer them over there. So, but yeah, it's jewelry, watches, and furs. I've done, trumpets, trombones, drum sets, fine art, watches, furs, things like that. If you've got a lot of that laying around, it's probably good to schedule it, because if there was a fire or anything like that, sometimes there's only certain limitations, on that sort of stuff.
Well, let me ask you, we've got about 3 minutes before the break. Is insurance pretty much available for anyone, or is there does it, like for lenders, there's a minimum credit score where, hey, there's no programs available below this score? Is there a rating or something?
Yeah. So pretty much pretty much everybody can get insurance. And if you have like a driver's license and you're driving around, you have to have auto insurance. Right. But credit is one of those factors that they do look at when you do get rated. We used to have the social, not anymore. We just use date of birth. But your credit, your driving record, all that stuff plays into account. So if you do that's one of the good things about working on your credit and getting qualified for a home. Most of the time it's at a certain limit. So you're going to get, decent prices for better credit than you would bad credit, so to speak. So, and I'm not a real big statistics guy on that sort of stuff, but I've heard that, people with better claims history tend to have better credit. People with worse credit have worse claims history. I've had it both ways. I've had people that have really good credit, had a lot of claims, and people with really bad credit that never had a claim, so, but it all goes on numbers.
Well, can the house be blamed? Like the house that, if I'm buying a house and I've never really filed any claims, but that house has had claims filed on it from the previous owners, it just would file.
It just depends on what it is. Usually if it's a hail claim and they put a brand new roof on it, not going to affect you. But if the house has had a couple of fires, then that's a different story. Your normal hail, windstorm claims, that's not going to affect you too bad at all. The ones that hurt, like dog bites, theft claims, fire claims, those are the ones that do affect you quite a bit. So,
well, but I'm okay. So that would be my claims, like me following me around, like, sometimes, hey, my dog bit somebody.
So like I've had a couple of houses where they've had $100,000 fire losses. They want to know that everything's been properly taken care of. They want inspection reports and all that kind of stuff, and we insured it no problem. But each carrier is different. So some carriers look at your past claims, some carriers don't care. They just want to look at the current house. So it's 6 one way, half a dozen the other. So If you do have some prior liability claims and some fire claims, those are going to follow you for about 5 years. Tickets and accidents, tickets, they stick with you for about 3. But most of the time, if you had fire claim, theft claim, fire claim, they're going to go with you for a little while anyway.
So watch your credit. Don't file too many claims if you don't have to. We're going to have a short break. We'll be back, talk some more insurance with Marcus Becerra. Thank you.
Here's important new information from the Diabetes Solution Center for you, a family member, or a loved one suffering with diabetes. If you have lost your provider, or if you need a provider for diabetic supplies, you may qualify to receive your diabetic testing supplies now with little or no out-of-pocket cost, regardless of your age. All you need is Medicare or private insurance to be potentially eligible. Call the Diabetes Solution Center right now for details. Just takes a couple of minutes. Our friendly, knowledgeable agents will give you free, no-obligation information, handle all the insurance paperwork, and make sure your supplies are delivered directly to your door for free.
Call U.S. Medical Supply 24 hours a day. 800-597-9323. 800-597-9323. 800-597-9323. Call right now. 800-597-9323.
Hey, there's something you forgot to do. It sure is hot. Are you sweating like a dog? Wait, what? Dogs don't sweat. Oh no, you forgot to get your window tinted. Whether it's the kitchen window that sits in the sun for the hottest part of the day, or you just got new wheels, call Sharp Window Tinting in Burleson. 817-615-9379, or look them up on the web, sharpwindowtint.com.
Fast Track Student Loans can get your student loans out of default, stop any wage garnishments, stop collection calls, and stop seizure of your tax refund. Give yourself a break. Stop the stress and get your student loan payments down to as little as $25 a month based on what you can afford to pay. 800-709-4395. 800-709-4395. 800-709-4395. 800-709-4395.
Serving Johnson County, Texas. Joco Community Radio.
Welcome back, folks, to Real Estate Reality. Got a little announcement here. Give me just a second. Joco Community Radio is proud to be the voice of Johnson County, Texas, and is live 365 on the TuneIn Radio Network. To listen or watch, simply go to tuneinjoco.com to choose where and how. The Joco Community Radio app is now available for free on Android and Apple devices. Simply search your store. Check out our lineup and more on jococommunityradio.com. This episode and more brought to you by Patriot Claims, making your insurance work for you. and I try to always go a little high.
Yeah.
So that when they talk to their agent, so I'd like you to go in, because I'm sure everybody, is curious, what goes into pricing these premiums out, this cost of getting insurance.
So I think the biggest thing is, I mean, obviously insurance companies like new builds. If it's a brand new 2022 build, your insurance rates are going to be quite a bit cheaper than something that was built in the 40s and hasn't had any updates, right? So I think lenders know that, hey, this is a brand new build. Insurance is not going to be $4,000 a month, or a year, on a 2,200 square foot house. So there's a lot of factors that kind of go into that. If the other thing too, as far as insurance goes, is if you live in town, your rates are going to be a little bit cheaper on your home insurance, and you're going to be kind of where I live in Grandview. And the reason is because it goes on PPC codes. And PPC codes go from 1 to 10, 1 being the best, 10 being the worst, obviously. And how it is so Burleson, I believe, is a 1. So typically everybody in the city limits is within 500 foot or 1,000 foot of a fire hydrant. And then it's within 5 miles of a responding fire station. Unfortunately, where I live out in the country, it is a little more peaceful, but dang sure not near a fire hydrant. And we're way more than 5 miles from a responding fire department. So insurance rates are going to be a little bit higher on that, because if it does catch fire or something like that happens, the likelihood of them saving that property is going to be far less than something if they're, if I live right around the corner from the fire station,
because you're on your own out there.
Oh yeah, right? You're on your own. You got a water hose maybe, but that's about it.
Your neighbors with the buckets,
for sure. And then the other thing too here lately, what's been driving rate is obviously the price to replace everything. 4 or 5 years ago, 130, 140 square foot house to rebuild, we're having to go 180, 200 sometimes, so those houses are going to be having to be insured for a little bit more than what they used to, because if there was a total loss, you got to have enough money to rebuild it like kind of quality in this time, so materials are up, labor's up, things are harder to get. So what I've talked to our referral partners about, is like, hey, if you're estimating this, over the last 3 or 4 years, you probably need to bump it up just a tick, because it's definitely changed. It's definitely a little bit higher. But the other thing that we talk about, and realtors know, and almost all lenders know, if we got a brand new roof, it's going to be cheaper on the insurance. And that is the fact. Used to, as long as you had one under 15 years of age, when I first started selling insurance, you had a rate. And that's changed tremendously. Now, if it's could be a couple $100 between 1 year, 5 years, and 10 years. So a lot of new buyers, new realtors, they're focusing on making sure their clients at least have a good roof, or a brand new roof if they can. Obviously, if there's no damage to it, they're not going to replace it, right? But majority of everybody in Johnson County over the last 8 or 10 years, we've had hailstorms. So it's one of those things when I talk to customers is, if your roof is 15 years old and it's in Cleburne or in Burleson, we've had some hail, so definitely to get the roof looked at. But yeah, it's changing. I don't think it's going to go down anytime soon. So we're having to darn sure insure those houses for a little bit more than when we did 3 or 4 years ago.
Well, I know when I first started lending, it used to be, hey, let's get the the rule was, let's get the insurance for enough to cover the loan amount, and we're okay with that. And I know there's still some lenders out there that do that, but the most lenders, especially on a house, are looking at what's the replacement cost. They want to know that home is going to be rebuilt
for sure.
So explain to me, if I'm looking at a policy and I see, say, the home's worth $300,000, and I see dwelling coverage of $250,000, but I also see a replacement cost. What exactly?
So there's a lot of factors that go into, cost of properties, what it costs to replace it, things like that. I guess the easiest way for me to explain it is kind of where I live. If you have a 2,000 square foot house on 15 acres, and you're buying the whole property, land and the house, and let's say you buy it for, I don't know, probably now it's worth, who knows, let's just say 700,000, right? But the house is only 1,500 square foot. There's no way we can insure. Unless it's just absolutely immaculate, intricate, top of the line stuff. most of the time you're not going to reach that $700,000 amount, for a 1,500 square foot house. So every carrier has what they call a replacement cost evaluation or estimate, and it goes, you plug in everything about the house, square footage, what year was built, what roof age, address, what kind of flooring, bathrooms, all that goes into this algorithm, so to speak, and it spits out a number, let's say 275, 300. So if the loan amount is 400,000, but they're buying 2 acres and the acreage is worth 100,000, technically we really can't insure the price of the land, because if the house were to get totaled, fire, tornado, anything like that, the land's not going anywhere. So most of the time the lender's okay with the loan amount or the coverage amount being less than the loan amount, as long as that replacement of cost evaluation says that the house is insured at 100% replacement cost.
So worried about what the dwelling being the main house where people actually live.
Exactly. So land is really excluded because I think on the tax roll it has your land and property and things like that. So, and then they go off of the appraisal sometimes, but I don't really go off of that because the appraisal has the lot and everything included in it. My goal is to make sure the house itself is insured at 100% replacement cost. Now, 15, 20 years down the road and you pay the house off, technically it's up to you whether you want to keep insurance or not, so but if you have a mortgage, they're going to require you to have at least 100% replacement cost on the home.
Well, not having insurance, I see people, they're like, yeah, I've got this house, no insurance. And I'm like, what do you do with hailstorms? I mean, I just replaced the roof myself.
Yeah.
Wow.
I don't have that kind of luxury.
Yeah. Good for you guys. Good for you guys. But not have hailstorms very often.
Yeah.
Because the price of a roof is not cheap.
Yeah, for sure. And that's the biggest thing is, and it's a process, right? It's not just like, hey, I want to give you an insurance policy. Here it is, and it's a 2-second thing. It's a process of seeing where the customer's at. We're, discussing, everything with them and being upfront with them as far as like what you have to have and what needs to be covered on the loan. So I think the biggest thing is the customer knowing education, I guess. And I don't want to bore people with over, because you can really dull somebody's brain just rolling over the top of them. But I want everybody to kind of know, like, hey, here's what the policy is. Here's what it entails. Do you have any questions? Do you have any recommendations? Do you have any changes that you want to make? And then once everybody says, hey, that's the policy I want, well, we fit it to them. And then hopefully most of the time it fits in where they need it, the mortgage. And so whenever you buy your first home, second home, whatever, that the contract, is what it is. So,
well, I was trying to think of, we're in Texas, so you don't think of famous trees. Well, I guess you kind of do. You could have someone with some really big, pecan trees. I don't know, maybe some apples. I don't know.
Yeah.
But what if someone had some of that landscaping that was really like historic, almost like a 300-year-old tree and something?
That's a good question. I know there's some limitations on like landscaping and tree removal, debris removal, things like that. But I know some people that have like pecan plantation and things like that. And I'm sure there's some probably farm and ranch, or like an agricultural type of policy, maybe similar to crop insurance, I would bet, like if something were to happen to the trees, and that's kind of how they make their money. Same thing with cattle, you can insure horses, livestock, all that kind of stuff, so.
Yeah, and that'd be more into your ag type stuff. But I was just talking about some historic tree in the backyard. If someone's like, man, this tree's worth a lot of money, it's been around a while.
Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question. I have to think. I have to really look into that. But and my first guess would probably be, there's not a way to replace it. It'd take 300 years to regrow that thing,
Yeah.
There might be a little bit of coverage for it, mainly for just moving it off and cutting it up. But I don't know if they would just give you that tree. I don't think so, but that's a good question.
No, but insurance company, they play the odds too.
Yeah.
Hey, that tree's been there 350 for, why wouldn't it be there another 100 years?
Yeah.
So that's money.
There's a tornado. I've seen some funky stuff with some tornadoes and what they do to barns and trees and things. And you see videos and,
but yet there's this tree that's been around 350, up here in North Texas. So, just curious on, because it's almost anything insurable.
Yeah.
There's probably out there some company that would insure.
Yeah, they got
anything.
pet insurance nowadays. We sell some of that every now and then. I don't have it on I've got horse insurance for mortality on my stuff just because, I've got some horses that are really nice. And if I were to lose them, it could be tornado or whatever, got hit by a truck, things like that. It takes some money to replace them. So, some people, they have pet insurance and things like that. And, you can insure just about anything you want, depending on how much, if you want to pay for it or not. That's the thing.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Is there, when you're looking at homes and homeowners insurance, what are the things that would make a home uninsurable?
The biggest thing is like the example I use is, let's say you had $500,000, and you put yourself in the insurance company's shoes, and you stand on the road and you look at that house and you're like, would you be willing to put $500,000 of your own money on that piece of property? Roof sagging, fascia boards deteriorated, bricks are falling off. That's the kind of stuff that from an insurance agent standpoint, you got to kind of put your put those kind of shoes on and evaluate it that way. Because there are some risks where people buy it and they're like, man, right now, I just don't think I can have, a contract or a company that'll want to touch that. Doesn't mean after 3 months of renovations and things like that, that it won't be insurable, but a lot of people are doing that these days. They can only afford whatever they can afford. And we can do a builder's risk policy on something like that. And they sink, I don't know, 100,000 in it, and it looks like a brand new house after they get done with it. Then that's, when you turn it into a home insurance contract. But yeah, there's definitely some houses and things like that. I remember one time when I went into a property in Dallas, we had to get inside inspection pictures, and the lady, she was a hoarder. And she goes, you have to get inside pictures? I'm like, yes, ma'am. And I went in there, and there was a trail about 2 foot wide through every room in the house, and that was a big time fire hazard. We don't have to
out at you.
Yeah, no, nothing. The weirdest thing is she had, like, in her living room, she had tires stacked up, and I was like, man, this is really weird. But I don't have to do that anymore. Most of the time, I'm going to say 95% of the carriers that we write with, I know you do a home inspection before, to see if there's any issues, but most of the time they're going to do an exterior, at least an exterior inspection, maybe 15, 30 days after. So if there is an issue that I think needs to be cleaned up, mainly, trees hanging on the roof, things like that, maybe a little bit of paint that wasn't a big issue in the first inspection. I just kind of advise folks like, hey, you're going to need to trim those trees back because you don't want them hanging on the roof and scraping up the shingles and things like that. But nothing, if it's pretty major, we got to address that up front. But most of the time nowadays, most houses are in pretty dang good shape, or else they're not going to get an FHA loan or whatever loan they qualify for, or they're not going to be like, hey, I'm not going to spend $400,000 on a house that's just, not in very good shape.
Well, and most of the time you have your real estate agent.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So no listing agent in their right mind is going to say, okay, this house is ready when the hoarder hasn't removed all their stuff. So they're going to be like, hey guys, you got to get rid of this stuff.
Yeah. Most of the time now, it's, if you're going to put a loan on it and you're going to borrow a lot of money, most of the time people, they want a nice house. They don't want something that's junky or is dilapidated or anything like that. And the same thing from the insurance company standpoint. They don't want to insure something that's going to be a risk right off the bat. I'm not going to say you're not going to have a hailstorm 1 week after you buy the house. That's, you don't know about that. But if there's some, big limbs hanging over the roof and some other underlying issues that are not, fences laying over and, doors hanging off one hinge and things like that, that's not a real good, not something we want to lay
right. On. And you, what you're saying is a lot of common sense is, hey, look it from the street.
Yeah.
Look it around. Now let's talk about the stuff that may not be common sense, like HVAC, heating systems. Because there's some older heating systems that'll
for sure
they're still being used in Texas.
Yeah, galvanized plumbing, that's a big one, and it's kind of big down on the coast. A lot of carriers don't like to mess around with that stuff. And then like circuit breakers, there's some things like that. And I think most of the time that gets brought up on the first inspection, by an inspector. They're going to say, hey, this is outdated electrical. And then they're going to make some kind of, either they're going to get it fixed, they're going to put something in there where they can give you a discount or whatever to get it done. But mainly the biggest things we look at is the roof. That's number one for us, specifically in the Metroplex, North Texas. But that's, I'm not a professional roofer, and that's why I really refer out, some really good reputable guys that go out there, take a look at it, and they'll get back to me and say, hey, Marcus, this roof is in excellent condition. Hey, Marcus, this roof is not insurable. They need to file a claim with their other insurance company. That's, whoever the listing agent is. And most of the time it gets worked out, so, and, the other thing too, I kind of, a little tidbit for folks that, might, not know about roofs or anything like that. If you go into a subdivision and every roof in there is brand new and the house you're going to look at is not, that's a big telltale factor of like, hey, this roof needs to be looked at, because that means there was a storm there. There's been a lot of other insurance carriers that have paid for roofs in that subdivision, and this one needs to be looked at for sure.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
And so I guess foundation doesn't really come up unless unless you're seeing bricks missing
For
or,
sure.
or huge
Yeah,
cracks.
that's
in the
another
side.
thing to look at. And that's a lot. I get this call a lot. Is, hey, right now it's dry. If you have a slab foundation, there's certain things you need to do to make sure it's maintained and the settling is good, but because typically settling is not going to be covered on the foundation coverage. The only, the big key there is it's in and out coverage. So if there's a slab leak caused by a busted pipe or anything like that, that's where their insurance carrier is that's what that endorsement's for. Not if it's been dry for 3 weeks or a month and it's been 100 degrees and it's, the foundation's not settling correctly. But yeah, there's, the water coverages are big whenever you come to that sort of thing. So,
and that's not flood insurance. And
No.
that's kind of, we got about 6 minutes left. So I'd like to get into flood because there was a time up here, lending in Texas where you flood insurance, unless you were directly on a lake or a big creek bed or something, you didn't really worry about it. And then I believe it's 2012, FEMA came and redid most of the maps around here. So people that, when they bought the home, weren't in a flood zone, all of a sudden it became a flood zone. So they're selling their homes, and whether they were notified, they're supposed to be notified by the proper authorities. Did they throw the stuff away? Whatever. So you got sellers going, we had no idea we were in a flood zone.
For
It
sure.
wasn't a flood zone when we bought it.
Yeah, and that can be a deal breaker sometimes on what the biggest thing, especially my realtors, I just let them know, like, hey, if you have any kind of questions on the flood zone, let me know the address. I can run a flood zone evaluation and let you know where it's at. But I think what a lot of times, there's some, I don't know, I call them like sleeves or some little vessels that run through Burleson and even Cleburne that are they're right in the middle of town. You wouldn't think it would flood, but they're in an A zone or an AE zone. So if it falls in that kind of situation, the lender, the mortgage company is going to require you to purchase flood insurance, so that may be a deal breaker on whether or not you're going to buy the house or you want to not buy the house, so, but flood insurance is one of those tricky things. Each mortgage company is different. Majority of mortgage companies are going to require a flood insurance through the National Flood Insurance Program, FEMA. But some mortgage companies are okay with like private flood companies, which most of the time private is a little bit different and the rates are a little bit cheaper. But some mortgage companies are like, hey, we have to have an NFIP, policy. But flood insurance is not covered on any policy in the state of Texas. It's a separate policy. So if you don't have flood insurance and it rains 30 inches or the river overflows and it gets into the house, there's no coverage unless you have flood policy, so that's where a lot of people get in a bind when we have hurricanes. Hey, it hadn't flooded here in 40 years, but we had Hurricane Harvey come sit here for 3 days and dump 40 inches of rain,
right?
Then you're in a bad spot.
It's never happened till it happens.
Exactly.
And it changes things.
Yeah.
And I know after 05 with Katrina and all that, and FEMA started changing that. It really changed the way people looked at flood.
Here lately, where everybody's been getting in a bind is if you're in a flood zone and you weren't in one 15 years ago, but you go to sell your house and never really were required to have flood insurance, a lot of people, in order to get the best rate on flood insurance, you typically need a flood elevation certificate. And those people never had one. So I think it's around $1,000, maybe $1,500 to get one of those elevation certificates.
Mhm.
So then that's another factor. Who pays for that? The buyer, the seller, there's a lot of things that go into, that part of the deal, so, an elevation certificate, I think like a surveyor or somebody like that comes out there and does that.
Yeah.
So.
Surveyors, I believe, would normally do that. So what's your worst, the most severe zone?
A
is A, just
Yes,
A
sir.
by itself,
Yeah,
right?
and then you got AE. Typically, if you're not in a high risk zone, you're going to have X. And usually, the flood insurance for a house like that, depending on how much coverage you want, is anywhere from $300 to $500. So if there's any question, I always advise folks, hey, if you have, especially like in a new subdivision, if you've never been there when it rains a lot, you don't know how the drainage is. Some people want to buy a flood policy that first year, because then they're there for a full physical year. They see how all the weather's done, how all the seasons and rain and snow or whatever it is. And then if they elect, like, hey, man, it rained 4 inches, or 10 inches twice, during the year, and it never got close to coming in the house, then they can elect to keep it or not, So I always leave it up to the customer, but it's something we always go over with them, because flood insurance is not covered. It's something that you have to purchase on your own.
Absolutely. Now, here's something I can say from the lending standpoint, where it's like, well, it's in a flood zone, and the people are like, yeah, but my home isn't. The country might be, so we could get the actual maps.
Yeah, no, that's another thing too. I mean, more than I do on that. Sometimes if they buy 10 acres and the house is on the front of the property, but the only piece of the property that's in the flood zone is the back left corner, doesn't touch the house. But I've had some mortgage companies like, hey, it doesn't matter if it's on the house or not, we need flood insurance. And I've had some mortgage companies say, hey, it's not even touching the house, we don't need flood insurance.
Okay. Well, we're one of those mortgage companies that, as long, we've even had it where there was one barn, and the barn itself was in a flood zone, but the house and any other improvements were not. And we okayed it. We just said, hey, we have to get the appraisal value excluding the barn.
Yeah.
Or you got to get flood insurance. And
that's all the fun stuff we deal with.
Yeah.
That's all the fun stuff we deal with on an everyday basis.
Hey, we're playing chess here. You one step forward, 2 steps back, but it's, whatever to get it done. But again, that's a buyer's choice. Hey, you can do flood insurance, or, let's see what an appraisal looks like, without that barn. And, that it happened to work out for that one.
Yeah.
But just because it's in a flood zone, folks, make sure, and especially we're talking out of town, make sure that that they're talking about the structures themselves being in a flood zone and not just the land, because that can make a difference. Don't just walk away from property you like because you think of that. We've got about a minute or less. I appreciate you coming.
Thank you.
On, Marcus, is there anything that you'd like to say just to people out there?
Yeah, no, we're here locally. So if you got any questions, concerns, or, you need to get a quote, my cell phone number is 817-764-2592. Located at 388 Southwest Johnson here in Burleson. We've got 6 agents that work with us, and they're all very highly trained, and we do a great job. The biggest thing, especially on the residential side, we get binders back to the mortgage company within less than 30 minutes most of the time, sometimes faster than that. But we can help with a lot of people. They can put my email on there, but if you have any questions, get in touch with us.
Yeah, we'll get that email on there, and I can attest, Marcus is great. He's helped a lot of my clients, and give him and Megan and those people at Goosehead with Marcus a chance. Thank you, Marcus.
All right, gig 'em.
From Burleson to Venus and Grandview to Godley, this is the voice of Johnson County, Joco Community Radio.